Thanks to my old compadre, Steve Wolf, for the invitation to be here today. I didn't really expect that I would know so many of you in the room, but I guess it's because for 14 years I was the Colorado River Commissioner for California, and also a couple of terms as chairman at CRUA, Colorado River Water Users. So it's great to be among my friends, and thank you all for being here. Chuck Cullum identified me as the sole remaining Californian in the room. I'm not sure what that was, but I think he was chumming the water trying to get some retort from me here, but that's not why I'm here. And as one of the previous speakers mentioned, we have 6 or 8 minutes each to walk through slides. I'm here because I'm a farmer. I'm a third-generation farmer from down in Southern California. We're immediately adjacent to the stream of the Colorado River, situated right on the border with Arizona. And we're harvesting something 12 months a year down there. My family has been there 106 years. We farm about 12,000 acres there, so we're quite a fixture in our small little valley. Here's a rundown of the basin, and as we all know, the law of the river guides us. Chairman Hart mentioned 40 million people are served by the Colorado River. Thought I'd mention 50% of those are in California. The river also supports 30 federally recognized tribes, 5.5 million acres of irrigated agriculture, 4,200 megawatts of hydropower, 11 national parks, and 4 recreation areas. So it's, if anything, an overworked river. This is a really interesting slide, and I'd like to leave it up here for a minute while I describe where I'm going with this, because what I want to do is go back. This is background information, but what really I want to talk about are 2 different conservation programs that we were forced to do in California in 2003. And we'll explain why, and this graph will help show it. But you can see at the top, 1999, the combined storage between Palo and Meade was 92%, almost full. It was just about full in 1999. And then look at the decline. Look at that rate of decline after 2000. It started then, and it went down basically like a rock. And you can wonder to yourself that must be drought, it must be climate change. But I would also suggest there were a couple of other factors involved in that. Number one, California, my state, was using 800,000 acre feet above its basic entitlement. And that was unused apportionment from here, basically, from the upper basin. And that was a legal entitlement. Well, you got down to about 2001, and the states were recognizing this sudden decline. And with the cooperation of Reclamation, we devised the interim surplus guidelines, and that was intended to provide California a few years of retrenchment to provide what we call the soft landing, get us from that 800,000 overrun down to our basic apportionment of 4.4. That overrun, coincidentally, was mainly going to our urban coastal plain, to Metropolitan Water District, not to the ag agencies. But like normal, ag became the target for that water savings. And in 2003, we executed in California the quantification settlement agreement. It was a hard agreement to come by. It was contested, it was reclamation, and many of the other states focused on Imperial Irrigation District and some perceived inefficiencies there in water use. Finally in 2003, Imperial capitulated, signed on to it, and starting in 2004, that agreement came into effect. And as you can see on the graph, in 2004, that decline stopped. Now, I'm just saying it's not exactly a coincidence that it stopped then. I think that 800,000 acre feet had a lot to do with it. The other aspect of that sharp decline was that in about 2001, Reclamation developed something, I think they called it, we define big words for small actions on the river, but they defined intentionally created unused apportionment for the lower basin. And what that did was mainly intended to benefit Arizona, to allow unused CAP apportionment to be stored in underground reservoirs in Arizona. So shortly after we started that sharp decline, it was accelerated by Arizona's suddenly taking their full entitlement that they had not been taking previously. So you had those two things contributing to that sharp drop, in addition to drought, climate change, whatever you want to call Mother Nature's impact on us. And so the decline kind of flattened out. We were flatline until, about 2020, and then the bottom fell out in 2022. So it's kind of an interesting history, but from my perspective, that quantification settlement agreement in California was pretty important. In California, we have 4 agencies, ag agencies with entitlements to the Colorado River. Palo Verde Irrigation District is my own. I'm serving as board president for the next few years. We have an unquantified right to water to irrigate about 104,500 acres, mostly planted to alfalfa, but we also produce a large number of fruit crops and vegetable crops. Our own farm is heavily committed to winter vegetables like broccoli and melons. Bard Water District is the next priority in California, followed by Imperial and then Coachella. The lowest priority, our junior in California, is Metropolitan Water District. So in managing our water supplies, as I mentioned previously, we have a basic apportionment of 4.4 acre feet. This 2003 QSA quantification settlement became the nation's largest ag-to-urban water transfer program, and it did finally allow California to reduce its water use by that 800,000 acre feet. It happened overnight due to the severity of that, due to that graph, that severity of decline in the reservoirs. The interesting thing about the QSA is that it doesn't involve land fallowing, and that's the comparison I'm going to draw here shortly. But it allowed for the institution of the irrigation district to install seepage recovery systems, lateral interties, so they had more flexibility in delivering water. What this slide calls operational reservoirs, like regulatory reservoirs scattered within the valley, canal lining, SCADA automation, and technology improvements for the district itself, for the institution. On the other hand, there's $500+ million that has been distributed since 2003 in direct payments to farmers for on-farm conservation practices, which includes leveling land, tailwater recovery systems, drip irrigation, sprinklers, and land leveling. So that's one way to skin the conservation cat. The comparison I would draw is with my own district. And in 2003, we also executed, separate from the QSA, a land fallowing agreement with Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. And I think the comparison's interesting. The PVID MET program was voluntary from the beginning. It called for rotational fallow, and it fallowed anywhere from 6,000 to 26,500 acres of our Priority 1 lands annually, depending upon the call from MET. The agreement that we executed was an option agreement with MET. So the option fee they paid us for participation was the actual value of the land. So they got a 35-year program, but they paid us to enroll the value of the land that we did enroll. And so on any given year, there's a minimum fallow call of 7%, a maximum of 28% of our entire valley. And for example, next year, starting in August of this year, we will be fallowing 28%, the maximum. So our valley's going to look checkerboard with a lot of fallowed acres. And that saved water is all going to Lake Mead to try to buttress the water levels at Mead. And as I said, the amount of water that is called, or the amount of acres that are called for, depend on MET's requirements. They annually make a call, and we're obligated to comply with that. And so here you have two different ways. One is probably the most harsh way, which is land fallowing. It takes land out of production for that period of time. It's good that it's rotational, but it has, in my opinion, after 19 years of this program, I think I can say, and even though I was involved in crafting the program, it has had unexpected consequences on our community, and not positive, not in a positive way. I think in retrospect, looking at how Imperial Irrigation District accomplished their conservation by on-farm programs and institutional improvements in water efficiency and delivery, is by far the better outcome. The communities, I would say, you look at the communities in Imperial Valley and you look at our own community in our valley, and they look similar, but the communities in Imperial are doing better than our community. And the bottom line is, when you diminish agriculture significantly by fallowing, you diminish the economic engine of the community that supports agriculture. So we're in the process now of reworking, at least attempting to engage with Metropolitan to try to rework the basic tenets of our program. We have 16 more years to go, and so we have a long way to go, and we think we can fine-tune it for a better outcome. But those are two different conservation techniques that were used when California had its come home to Jesus session with itself over the overuse of Colorado River water. And I'm not suggesting that this is something that will work here. Certainly for livestock, cow-calf guys, I don't know how that would apply. I think every part, every basin, every region within the basins have their own unique issues, and so this just happens to be how California resolved theirs in two different ways. And here's a slide. I'm sorry Tanya Trujillo wasn't here to join us because, as many of you know, she was my sidekick in California. I brought her to California to be our executive director at the Colorado River Board, and she was part of my team there. And this is her slide, actually, that she created. And you can see all these arrows going in all these different directions, mostly from IID to other areas. And you've got that little blob of green over adjacent to the river. That's my district, indicating our metropolitan program that generates up to 118,000 acre feet annually to metropolitan. The rest of these are both IID and Coachella contributions to San Diego metropolitan, the San Luis Rey Band of tribes in San Diego County, who since sold their water entitlement to San Diego Water Authority. So if you add up all these numbers, there's up to 700,000 acre feet at maximum in any 1 year moving around California, and it's mostly ag to urban transfers. And so I would say at the end of the day, comparing the transfers based on fallow versus the transfers based on alternate conservation, on-farm and institutional conservation, I would say it's possible you could do a combination of the two, but before I do fallowing, I do the other in retrospect. And this slide is merely the same as Tanya's slide. Basically, it shows the percentage of distribution of water conservation out of IID toward satisfying the quantification settlement agreement. And that's the comparison I wanted to show to you, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.